Right now, the United States is at war. Operation Epic Fury, the American military campaign against Iran, began on February 28, 2026. B-2 stealth bombers are flying 37-hour round trips to strike hardened underground facilities. F-22s are running escort missions. Navy FA-18s are launching from carriers in the Persian Gulf. B-1s and B-52s are hitting missile sites and command centers. Every single one of these aircraft depend on the same thing: fuel. And the aircraft providing that fuel is a plane built during the Eisenhower administration, the KC-135 Stratotanker. It doesn't carry weapons, and it rarely makes headlines. It just keeps everything else in the air. A flying boom extends from its tail, controlled by a single operator lying face down, and transfers nearly 1,000 gallons of fuel per minute to whatever aircraft is flying 50 feet behind it. Without it, the B-2 cannot reach Iran from Missouri and return. The F-22 runs out of time over the target, and the Navy fighter has to turn back before the mission is complete. In Operation Epic Fury, the KC-135 is what keeps the pressure on. More time on station, more options for commanders, more responsiveness against fleeting targets, and greater ability to keep pressure on Iranian air defense and missile networks. That is not a support role. That is the mission. To understand just how critical this aircraft is, go back 9 months. Late on June 21st, 2025, striking in the early hours of June 22nd, Iranian time, 7 B-2 bombers of the 509th Bomb Wing departed from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri and flew eastward towards the Middle East continuously for 18 hours, refueling mid-air 3 times. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs called it the largest B-2 operational strike in U.S. history. The pilots had to conduct 6 to 7 mid-air refuelings, each taking about 30 minutes. Without those refuelings, without the KC-135s waiting at altitude across Europe and the Middle East, those bombers never reach Iran. The mission that reshaped the Middle East does not happen. Nobody reported that part of the story, because that's the thing about this airplane. It doesn't get the credit. It just does the work. The KC-135 first flew in 1956. It was built for the Cold War, to keep B-52s airborne long enough to reach Soviet targets. A stopgap solution while something better was developed. But something better never arrived, so the KC-135 kept flying. Through Vietnam, where its crews flew nearly 200,000 sorties and completed over 800,000 refuelings, saving pilots who would never have made it home otherwise. Through Desert Storm, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, every major American air campaign of the last 60 years. In 1967, Major John Castile and his crew were conducting routine refueling operations over the Gulf of Tonkin when an emergency call came in from 6 Navy aircraft: 2 A-3 Sky Warriors, 2 F-8 Crusaders, and 2 F-4 Phantoms, coming off strike missions with nearly nothing left in their tanks. Castile broke contact with the Air Force F-104s he was already fueling and turned to meet them. The Navy planes couldn't climb to a safe refueling altitude. They had to do it at 5,000 feet. While refueling one of the A-3s, an F-8 went critical. No time to wait. Castile's crew guided the F-8 onto the A-3's refueling boom, while the A-3 was still taking gas from the KC-135, a daisy chain of fuel passing through 3 aircraft simultaneously. What may have been the first tri-level refueling in history, improvised under pressure, in range of enemy fire. They repeated the process until all 6 Navy aircraft were safe. His crew was doing something none of them had ever trained for: cross-service refueling of Navy aircraft, technically against the rules, with their own tanks draining toward nothing. The crew received the Mackay Trophy, awarded annually for the most meritorious flight of the year by an Air Force crew. Most people have never heard of it. Every KC-135 flying in support of operations over Iran right now is over 60 years old. And here is the problem that nobody is talking about while the bombs are falling. The Air Force ordered a replacement, the KC-46 Pegasus. More modern, more capable, designed to finally retire these aging airframes. But the KC-46 has serious, unresolved deficiencies in the very system that guides refueling. The Air Force has classified 5 of them as Category 1, meaning they pose a direct risk to life and aircraft. The most critical fix, an overhaul of the remote vision system, was originally due in March 2024. It has been pushed back 3 times and is now not expected until mid-2027. The KC-135 and KC-46 are both flying missions in Operation Epic Fury right now, but it is the 60-year-old KC-135 that remains the backbone. The KC-10, the other large tanker in the fleet, has already been retired. The gap between what exists and what is needed is not closing. It is growing. The Air Force ordered roughly 180 KC-46 to replace nearly 400 KC-135s. Future tanker programs are in development, but they won't arrive until the 2030s at the earliest. At the current replacement rate, the last KC-135 won't retire until the 2050s. That means crews flying combat missions over whatever war comes next will be doing it in aircraft older than their grandparents. And China isn't waiting. Beijing is expanding its own tanker fleet. The Y-20A, China's emerging answer to the KC-135, is operational. Estimates put the current fleet somewhere between 10 and 20 aircraft, with more in the pipeline and negotiations underway to supplement with Russian IL-78s. That is not yet a peer force, but it is the beginning of one. For the first time in 60 years, the aerial refueling advantage America has held is being challenged. And then, on March 12th of this year, the fragility of all of this became impossible to ignore. A KC-135 Stratotanker went down in western Iraq while operating in friendly airspace during Operation Epic Fury. Tragically, all 6 crew members were killed. Officials confirmed the loss was not the result of hostile or friendly fire. The cause remains under investigation. Unlike the fighters it supports, the KC-135 has no ejection seats and no parachutes. For the crew, if something goes catastrophically wrong at low altitude, there is no way out. The United States operates roughly 75% of all aerial tanker aircraft on Earth. That advantage is the reason American air power can operate anywhere on the planet. It is the reason B-2s can fly from Missouri to Iran and back. It is the reason land-based fighters can sustain operations thousands of miles from home. But that advantage rests almost entirely on an aircraft that is older than most of the pilots flying it. Military officials expect the Stratotanker will operate until 2050, or possibly even longer. By then, the youngest KC-135 in the fleet will be 85 years old. No other weapons system in the American arsenal carries that kind of age and that kind of irreplaceability at the same time. The Air Force has since expanded its KC-46 order, from the original 179 aircraft to a planned 263. That is a meaningful increase. It is still not a one-for-one replacement for nearly 400 KC-135s, and the expanded order is planned, not yet fully funded. To understand what that means strategically, consider this. Right now, the United States can project air power to any point on Earth within hours. That capability is almost entirely dependent on tankers. If the KC-135 fleet degrades faster than the KC-46 can replace it, if the gap grows wide enough, there will be a window. A period of years where American reach is reduced, where the fighters can't stay as long, where the bombers need more stops. China's military planners are not unaware of this. They are counting on it. Right now, as Operation Epic Fury continues, KC-135s are flying multiple sorties every day over the Middle East. They are keeping B-2s in the air. They are extending the reach of Navy fighters. They are making the entire operation possible. When the war ends, whenever that is, they will redeploy and begin doing the same thing somewhere else.